A very easy mistake to make with the Peplink Orbit Series is to assume that it's just a rebadge of previous hardware. And in many ways it is, of course. This obviously looks like a BR1 Pro, but is now the Orbit 2. So why should we care? Why should we consider the Orbit Series as something more than just that? A rebadging, a removal of cellular and a rebadging of the unit. Actually, I think that rebadging and that messaging is one of the most important parts of the Orbit Series. Yes, it's nice that you can get devices now where there's more WAN ports than there are LAN ports. The flip, if you like, of how things have been to date. But the Orbit Series really is a way of standing up and saying the way we deliver connectivity at the edge has changed forever. And what do I mean by that? For nearly a decade, we've been using cellular connectivity by itself, where we needed to connect remote sites that were nowhere near existing infrastructure. That had limitations, of course, and we fixed those by using multiple cellular links and bonding them together, but there were still instances where we were outside of cellular coverage. And then satellite came along, or rather, geostationary satellite's been around for a very long time, but that was the last resort, wasn't it? Use that only if I really have to, because it costs too much money, and the performance, the latency is very high, the performance isn't great. Then along skips Starlink and LEO connectivity, and the connectivity world at the edge completely exploded. It exploded because for the first time you could get high bandwidth at comparatively low latencies. And it went almost seemingly overnight from a little bit of coverage for those of us in beta to global coverage based on the vehicles that SpaceX could provide and the launch frequency and cadence that was available. Starlink had literally appeared seemingly from nowhere. And the previous ideas of how we should use WANs at the edge, which were valid perhaps back then when it came to cellular, but started to become invalid when we consider LEO. Cellular could be put in a window. It could actually be run inside of a building, right? You could have routers with stick antennas at the back and you would get reasonable signal, although you would always get something better if you were external. LEO is very strict. It has to be outside and it has to be able to see the sky. And so we were forced to change how we deploy connectivity at the edge. We had LEO satellite. We were cabling that back to cellular routers. Often those cellular routers were connected with external antennas over coax. And you're in a weird juxtaposition of directly connected antennas and remotely deployed antenna systems. So the Orbit Series, for me, is really just drawing a line in the sand and saying, you know what? The right way to do edge connectivity today, if you're going to do redundancy and resilience and bonding, if you need something that's serious, is to have your hub device that manages the WAN connectivity in your rack, in your server room, wherever your internal IT sits. And then all of the connectivity that needs to access LEO and cellular networks, let's put that outside, where it belongs, where it needs to be, where the signal is strongest. And so Orbit is as much about LEO orbit or low Earth orbit and satellites as it is about recognizing that in the core of your connectivity as a device and around the outside, we have all of the internet links that come into it. At least that's my view. So today, if I'm deploying connectivity into a warehouse, I would take an Orbit device, I would put that in the rack, and then I would cable out from there to remotely deployed cellular routers, to LEO, to satellite systems on the roof, as a spider, if you will, right? With the legs of the spider reaching out to the different corners of the warehouse so I can get different cellular providers and different compass faces of that building. And if we consider vessels today, particularly the large ones, we're doing exactly the same thing. We've got LEO on the upper decks, in the mast, in the rigging. We've got cellular antennas, bow, stern, port, starboard. And we're capturing whatever connectivity is available and bringing it back into our rack, into our comms room, into wherever it needs to be. So Orbit is really a step, a committed step into that direction, into that idea. And I, for one, am really glad to see it here. I'm very excited to see how well the new firmware with SpeedFusion Boost is going to really enhance our use of LEO and cellular on devices like the Orbit. And I think we're seeing now a maturing of the technology in line with the connectivity that's available. And it's exactly the right way to be doing edge connectivity today.